is, your work with the food pantry does bring an important perspective.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Robin?
Hi, I'm Robin. I am a member of the trust as well. This is actually my first service with the Winchester government, and my perspective comes more from grew up in the low-income housing more than anything else. So yeah, that's it.
Yep. Who else do I have? Stacy?
Hi, I'm Stacy Irizarry, and I also joined the Affordable Housing Trust with the perspective of someone having grown up in low-income housing.
And Beth is also a member of the trust, so she gets to wear two hats here.
I'm Beth Rudolph. I'm the acting town manager and town engineer. I've worked for the town for almost over 17 years. Thanks.
Great. And Michael Betancourt, I see you've joined us as the other member of the trust. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, Mike Betancourt, the select board representative to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Great.
Sorry, I'm driving.
No problem. I'm glad that you can be a part of this. So we do have two other trust members who aren't with us at the moment. Hopefully they'll be joining later. And we've got Susan Verdicchio joining us on the phone. So Susan, I'm glad you could join and also be a part of the conversation. And as Steve said, he's in transit as well. So let's kick it off. You all represent different parts of the Winchester housing landscape. So I think what I'd like to do is, we have the three questions. The first one, what's your organization's role in affordable housing, and describe your organization's short and long-term priorities. So maybe each of you could introduce yourself and then answer that question, and then we'll go to the next person. So John, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. John Serbier, I'm chair of the Winchester Housing Partnership Board. And the Housing Partnership Board was created, I believe, in 1987 by town meeting. And our assigned role is to be advisory on housing issues, and particularly affordable housing issues, to town meeting and to other town boards. And that's principally involved working with the select board and the planning board. We've probably, at least really always, but certainly in the last several years, have pushed the advisory role a little bit beyond just giving advice, and that we've actively worked with various town boards on initiatives. So just to cite two examples, we worked with the planning board in developing the inclusionary housing provisions that are included in now in the central business district zoning and in the along North Main Street. We also worked with the select board in actively drafting the request for proposals for redevelopment of the Waterfield parcel. In terms of short-term priorities, I often feel that there are so many housing initiatives going on in town right now that we're just trying to keep up with them. And so that includes, in addition to Waterfield, includes the land at Washington and Swanton Street, the 10 Converse Place proposal, the 654 Main Street proposal. We've recently sold what are known as first-time homebuyer units at Winning Farm, and on Monday is the closing day for applications for an affordable unit at Elmwood. I think the longer-term priorities have been, trying to convince the town to be proactive at identifying development opportunities that are longer term in nature. And so, it was that sort of involvement that led the Housing Partnership Board to work with the planning board on the town center zoning. And the two longer term initiatives right now really are that one, the planning board is just beginning to look at, and that's the Holton Street area. And that's an old industrial area that a realtor told me, I think 5 years ago, 10 or 15 years, that's going to look very different. And so the question is, how does it look different? Is there a role for housing there? What kind of housing? What kind of developments in there? There was a proposal a few years ago for the Thai logistics site that did not go forward for a number of reasons in there. And the other kind of longer term action we're involved in right now is looking at North Main Street and rezoning along North Main Street to allow both mixed use development, duplexes, triplexes, a variety of housing options. So is that enough to answer question one?
I think that sounds great. All right, so we're gonna jump now to Sue, and after all three of you have gone, then we'll pepper you with some questions about each one. So Sue Cashel, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, I've been in housing for 27 years, and last year I became the director of Winchester Housing. As most of you know, our goal is to promote fair and adequate housing for low and moderate income people. One of our main focuses right now is we'd like to get, we'd love more housing, but we'd like to get a group home going for young disabled people. And that's what we're doing right now.
Could you just describe a little bit about your portfolio for people who don't know what you own and just a little bit about the programs that you run?
Sure. So we have 112 elderly disabled units. We have 7 family housing units. So when people will call and say, I need family housing, and we say, well, it's going to be a very long time. Well, why? Well, we only have 7 units in total for family housing. Then we have 5 management units, and we have 143 Section 8 vouchers. Now, it's important for you to note that although Winchester has 143 vouchers, the majority of them are not in Winchester. Just because mainly it's too hard to find a place to rent in Winchester. Although our board has been very proactive and we have adopted, excuse me, we have adopted the small area FMRs, which really bumped the rent up quite a bit. So to make it a little bit easier for people to find housing.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Sue. And then we've also got Leora Norwich, who's joined us also from the Network for Social Justice. So Zena and Leora are both here. So I'm not sure which of you are going to talk about the Housing Coalition. So Zena, do you want to kick it off, or Leora? I don't know, since you're both involved with that work.
So I'll start off, and I'm going to let Zaina jump in as I forget many of the things that I wanted to say. So I'm Leora. I'm from the Network for Social Justice, and I think I wanted to start off by saying we've been working to build a grassroots coalition in town. We're working very hard to lead and then pass off this coalition as much as possible. So using our infrastructure to build it, to recruit folks, to help to orient folks, and then sort of casting it off into the water and hoping that the affordable housing coalition that we built floats. We've been working really since for the past year doing this. We started almost exactly now. We started in April 2021 with some community education programs and sort of launching this, and then sort of seeking our way with experts in town and starting to think about how to diversify this coalition and how to make sure that it was in the right direction in terms of the strategy that it was employing. So we have folks that are working, we've worked with CHAPA. So we started working with CHAPA last sort of November, December. We got a grant with them, and the grant was really an in-kind grant for support of some of our activities related to giving us some strategic direction to what we were doing and how to really build this coalition and give it the framework for success. We have folks now that are working on community education and thinking through that. We have folks that are working on community engagement and outreach. So in my mind, that's building this coalition, identifying the folks in town who are both experts on affordable housing and are most impacted by affordable housing or potentials for affordable housing, who have a voice in this work as well. And then thinking through advocacy, what projects we could be supporting, what developments we could be supporting, what mechanisms in town need additional visibility that we could be giving visibility to, like the Affordable Housing Trust. We do have a mission statement, which I will read off. And then what I think I'll do, if it's okay, is I'll let Zaina speak to a few of the other things her and I brainstormed in terms of the dynamics of the coalition. So we are working to create an organized, sustained, and broad community coalition to advance diversified and affordable housing in Winchester. As I mentioned, we're working on organizing targeted educational programs around affordable housing more generally, bringing people into this conversation, leading grassroots advocacy, and supporting affordable housing policies, approaches, and projects, as well as figuring out how to engage folks in an ongoing way moving forward, which is, I think, our bread and butter as the network. So bringing in our community organizing approach to a larger approach that's led by folks who really know exactly what needs to happen with affordable housing in this town. Zaina, do you want to add anything to what the sort of overview that I gave?
Sorry, thanks, Leora. That was a great explanation of exactly what we see the organization that we've built, the Grassroots Coalition, what we have experienced ourselves and what we expect the coalition role to serve. It is a separate entity from the Network for Social Justice, and education seems to be a very ripe area for our coalition to serve the community. There's a lot of concepts and terminology. As Marty knows, I've reached out to her several times, and John too, about the complexities, including the financing and stuff. And so this coalition is really about educating ourselves and the town about some of those nuances, making the topic more accessible to people. We're also interested in working with you all to raise the visibility of affordable housing mechanisms already in town. I recently learned of Jen in our town who does the affordable housing auctions and all of those events. I mean, she is the town person on affordable housing. Thank you for introducing us, Beth. So there are a lot of things in place already that people need to be aware of in order to build our capacity for engaging our town members to advocate for what their needs are. For the short term, we are looking at what our priority should be. Because this is a newer organization, we're reaching out to the experts in town that sit on our strategy and policy team to say, where can we build support? Because this is such an important, visible topic for everybody right now. Our longer term goals are to build the coalition, to grow it, and to create an independent body that is able to step in and have a say and bring the voice of town members to the table. I think that covers one.
That's great. So that's a great high-level overview for all of your groups. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it to our members of the trust. And do people have any questions? Want to follow up a little bit about what each group does, or have a question for any of our guests tonight? Okay, hearing no questions.
I have a question for Sue. You mentioned the group home kind of priority. Do you have a site that you have in mind, or do you have any, kind of progress on that?
There we go. Yes. We'd like to use one of, eventually, we'd like to use one of our management sites because actually, as the MAPC, a study that Winchester had done a few years ago says, the way to build affordable housing best is to build on what you have. So if we could take, excuse me, I've been sick for a few days. If we could take one of our properties that we have and turn it into a group home, even like, and start small, like would take a 2-bedroom unit. By doing that, then it becomes, instead of 1 unit, it becomes 2 because each bedroom has a voucher attached to it. It would be project-based.
You're not
And-
looking at this point to build like a totally separate independent building. It would be more of converting a unit you currently have to that type of structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Susan, would you define a management site for me and perhaps for others as well? What are
Those
the
are
examples that you're putting in under that umbrella?
management sites are properties that the housing authority owns, and they're not run by the state or the feds. They're run by our housing authority. And that's what funds us. A lot of that, the rents from those 5 buildings help fund us.
I see. So those are they weren't funded by ongoing state or federal programs. They were funded by something to build them or fix them up or whatever. And now you own them and the rents help pay for it as opposed to going to the state. So the family units that you have are part of a state funding
Those are
system.
705 units and the
Yes.
state pays for those. Well,
Right.
they subsidize them.
Right, they pay for some of it, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of 2 examples of management units. So tell me if I'm correct or incorrect. I mean, one, I think the Housing Authority has a 2-family house on North Main Street somewhere. And then you also have units at the Parkview.
Yes.
Are those both
Okay.
management units?
Yeah, we have 1 unit at the Parkview. And we have one on North Main Street.
Okay.
Right. Okay, so that makes sense. And I assume to be able to turn them into a group home, you'd have to get some money for some renovations or do some things to make sure they were adequate for the disability community.
Yeah, and we'd also have to, so we're exploring that right now. Because we had put out an RFP a while back. And nobody wanted to lease us their property. And so we've got to be very careful. We've hired a consultant and she said, you know, we have to be careful to be the landlord and the owner, as well as controlling the vouchers, because ultimately then we're only one player. So it's easier, she said, if we could get somebody, and we're gonna try, I believe, again. If we could get somebody to lease their home for a group home, then they'd be the landlord and we'd be the housing authority owning the vouchers.
Yeah, so as that initiative moves forward, it'd be great for us to just know what's going on. And if we can help spread the word or help, you know, if you decide to go out for an RFP or whatever, we'd be great
Okay,
to be able to, you know, because it's always amazing how people that we were just talking before, people don't find out about things. So we'd be happy to be part of, you know, sharing information and ideas about that.
Great, thank you.
Good. Okay, so let's move on to question 2, which is, what helps your organization be successful? And what are the challenges to your success? So Sue, why don't we stick with you? Do you want to just tackle that one?
sure, what helps our organization be successful is the people that work for it. Every one of us work around the clock if need be. And not any of us would ever say, well, that's not my job, so I'm not going to do it. And truthfully, I think that's the key to almost any successful organization. The town has been very giving to us. We only have 1.5 maintenance men for all our property, which is not a lot. So I will say that the town has been quite nice, like if we've had a major snowstorm or something, helping us out. So that's what, you know, and the challenge is basically, I would say, funding more than anything else. And right now, I'm finding a big challenge is getting people to want to, I put a bid out recently for stairs, cement stairs. I sent it out to 5 people. 1 person responded. And I don't know if anybody else is finding that, but it seems like there's not enough contractors to do work.
Contractors are busy. Yep.
So that's a challenge.
Yep. And you've got procedures you have to go through in order to get a contractor. So you can't just kind of walk down the street and find somebody. Yeah, you got to go
Right.
through the whole, yeah. That's complicated.
Right.
Yep. Great. Okay, Zena.
So it's a really interesting time for us in the coalition. We already have 50 to 60 folks involved, which is a huge number, way more than even CHAPA expected us to bring to the table. Our other strength is that we have experience in education programs. We have experience in advocacy and organizing at the network. Our partner, they also bring in support with logistics. Those are really key strengths to build off of. Our outreach to the trust, to the Housing Partnership Board, to other groups working in housing has been really important in building our track for success. CHAPA helped us launch and then continues to connect us with other communities doing this work. We even had a representative of the Arlington Coalition, Equitable Arlington, at our launch, which was really good because she followed up with a lot of the lessons they learned working with their town meeting, et cetera. Like I said, the network brings a very important part of this, which is the community organizing and logistics. Our challenges are similar to what we talked about earlier, that, you know, housing advocacy is so esoteric. There's so much jargon. There are so many complexities to it. So when you start down the track of trying to explain it, it can become a very deep rabbit hole. So how do we make it more accessible to folks? We all need housing, you know, and so there's at least a thread of commonality throughout the conversation. And then another big challenge is, how do we confront long-held myths amongst our residents in order to change the narratives around affordable housing? Who needs the affordable housing? And confront their fears about changing the feel of the town, or the downtown needs to stay quaint. Those kinds of ideas that, though they're well-intentioned, end up creating more and more barriers. And then people don't come into these rooms where decisions are being made to explain their situation and why their struggles for affordable housing are so relevant. And for example, when we talk about affordable housing with community members, a lot of people think that it's going to be bringing in a lot of people from Dorchester and Roxbury. and they other that community of folks who need affordable housing, neglecting, first of all, not doing that, but secondly, not realizing that this is an issue for senior citizens in our community, the disabled community, as well as young families who just can't come back home if they grew up in Winchester and want to live close to their parents. There's just not enough affordable housing for them to start off. And so it's about broadening our understanding of the impact of housing and the cost of housing that is going to be a challenge. But of course, we have the organizing experience to bring those voices to the table so that those stories are heard.
Great. Okay. John.
Well, to answer the first part of the question, I think the two things that we've tried to do is, recruit kind of knowledgeable, experienced, good people to be on the Housing Partnership Board. So there's a broad range of expertise. I don't think I said this before, but the Housing Partnership Board consists of 13 people. 6 of them are appointed by the town moderator. 7 of them represent other town boards, including the Select Board, the Planning Board, Housing Authority, the Council on Aging, the Disabilities Access Commission. So there's a diverse set of views. There are two members of the 2 at-large members are realtors in town, and that really helps us to understand the town's housing market. The challenges, there's so many challenges that I get overwhelmed. One is that the housing needs in the greater Boston area are huge. And there's a great and growing gap between the demand for housing and the supply for housing. And so the question is, what are the steps that Winchester can take to contribute to that? We're part of, we tend to view ourselves as an isolated, independent community. In reality, we're part of the Boston metropolitan area, and the Boston region is growing. We need to continue to grow as a community if we're going to remain a viable community. The new challenges that have emerged over the last several years. One is there is a increasing willingness to openly discriminate against people, particularly non-whites, discrimination based on religious grounds, and all of a sudden that has once again become acceptable. And it's sometimes direct, it's often indirect, but we're seeing that in Winchester. We're certainly seeing that nationally. We're seeing that in the Boston region. The other trend that we're seeing that has caused a lot of difficulty is kind of a lack of respect for law, a lack of respect for political norms. And so last spring, town meeting voted on 2 separate occasions to approve the Waterfield development. A minority of town meeting members didn't like that. They created a citizen referendum, and that's forced the whole Waterfield development to be revisited. There's a special town meeting coming up on June 9th, I believe is the date. But that's the first time.
June 6th.
What?
June 6th.
Okay. That's the first time I can remember, the time I've lived in Winchester, that a portion of town meeting has refused to accept a majority vote. And that's a barrier that, that we're working against. This gets at what Zena said. And this is CHAPA stands for Citizens Housing and Planning Association. It is a state level group. And the group that we're working with is what they call the Municipal Engagement Unit, and they have a theme of that's called making the case. And so it's how do you recognize the coded language that's being used in hearings for the Zoning Board of Appeals, the coded language that's used on the floor of town meeting in there, and how do you kind of react and respond to that coded language? So people very often, I've heard in Winchester comments that we don't want those kinds of people living here. I moved here to get away from those kinds of people. The majority of the times, they target other things, and it's traffic. This housing will overwhelm the schools. There's not adequate fire protection, and so you have to address each and every one of those issues and prove that there really is adequate fire access and for emergencies, and the fire department is happy with the design. And so the kind of political process of getting these projects approved is just all consuming. Are those enough challenges, Marty?
There are challenges, yeah. And
I see Marty laughing and Beth smiling.
Well, you've also seen it over time, John. So you actually bring an interesting perspective about our community, having been involved in affordable housing in town for such a long time. And it is distressing to hear that from you, who's been involved in it for a long time. I don't know, Sue, you've been involved in our town for a long time too. And I don't know if you're seeing similar unfortunate trends, but it is a challenging time.
Yeah, I think Winchester, over the last, Housing Partnership Board was created in response to affordable housing controversies and actually enforcement action that what is now the Department of Housing and Community Development took against the town. So compared to the 1980s, we've actually accomplished a lot. We're much more acceptable than we were. That doesn't mean that the challenges are not still out there.
All right, so why don't we turn the question to, we kind of worded the question of what gaps do you see in affordable housing in Winchester, but I think part of our question as a trust is, what opportunities do you all see where there are gaps that an organization like the trust might be able to play a role that's not actually being addressed now, or supplement something. So I don't know if you three have had any creative ideas for us or some suggestions of gaps that we might be able to address, but I would love to hear some ideas about that. So I'll go back to Sue, and from your perspective, do you have some thoughts?
Here we go.
Oh, we can't hear you.
How about, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I think John hit a lot on the head. Some of our people will say, if they find out I have a Section 8 voucher first, they won't rent to us. And I always tell them, well, tell them to call us. And then, in the last 2 years, if you were a landlord that had people that had a Section 8 voucher, you were a lucky landlord because you never missed a rent payment. And so, excuse me. So I think a lot of it is just explaining to people some of our programs and some of the benefits to being involved with us as far as that goes. I think that one thing is the state now handles our waiting list. We put them in and they run it. And so it's a very complex issue. And because the state's #1 goal is to end homelessness, and I don't know if anyone has heard this, but we're getting a lot of people that have absolutely no ties to Winchester coming into the elderly disabled housing. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are already in there, they get so upset because they're like, you know, I can't get in, and I've spent my whole life here in Winchester. But if you're homeless, you're going to go first. And so unfortunately, now that the state dictates that waiting list, that's what seems to happen a lot. So that is definitely a challenge, getting people to understand that we're not sitting back in the office saying, oh, you know what? I don't think we'll house anyone from Winchester today. And people don't understand that all of this is regulated now. And with regulations, you know, you have to cross every T and dot every I. So that is a huge challenge for us.
So one of the things you said earlier, Sue, this whole issue of, you know, landlords aren't receptive to people with Section 8 vouchers, which is a very common issue for sure. But, you know, that's another thing when we're talking about education and just awareness and you know, are there things that, you know, more of us can do to kind of help with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Winchester Housing, we have probably, well, we haven't the last couple of years because we haven't had in-person meetings, but prior to that, we would run a landlord night. And we just put a little, you know, blurb out, come to our landlord night, come find out why you want to be a Section 8 landlord. Because there are several things, for whatever reason, oh my God, they have a Section 8. What kind of a person are they? Well, guess what? I always tell people, when you're little, you don't say, when I grow up, I want to stand in front of Mrs. Cashel and ask for housing. It's through circumstances that get you there. That's all it is. And I think that people need to realize that Section 8 tenants, they've all been queried before they get a voucher. If you have a bad query, you don't get a voucher. So, you know, there's a lot of real pros to being a landlord. And again, I've been doing this for 27 years. It's the 80-20 rule. 80% of our people are good, hardworking, decent people. 20%, but go down any neighborhood. 80% of those people have worked hard for their houses and are doing the right thing. So,
yeah, similar thing. Okay, John, do you want to talk about our?
Yeah,
where the
well,
gaps
I was
and
gonna
opportunities
just ask a question. Can I lead off with a question?
Yep.
My understanding is that it's illegal to reject a tenant because they have a Section 8. That's a violation of the Fair Housing Act. Oops, you're back on mute.
yep, there you go. That's correct. If somebody comes out and says, I'm not housing you because you have a Section 8, then that's we give them the discrimination laws and where they can go and everything. I don't see a lot of that with my people as much. A lot of the people that I have just automatically assume that they're not going to get it. So I think if they present themselves and then say, I have a voucher from Winchester Housing, it's a little harder for somebody to say, well, I don't want you, because you've already made a good impression.
Yeah, I think I feel like I'm going to cheat in answering this because I listened to Dion Jarius give his presentation to town meeting last night in there, and I worked with Dion a little bit in putting that together. One of the needs is for more rental housing, and the inventory of rental housing in town has decreased as those units have been converted to condominiums in there. And so one of the challenges is to, how do you build more rental housing? The two big developments or larger developments right now that are under construction, one on River Street, which is off Cross Street, and the other one's at 416 Cambridge Street, will be very valuable in meeting that rental need. The other term that's commonly used is the missing middle, and that has a couple of different perspectives. One is income, and so if you're very low income, you could maybe apply and maybe even get a Section 8 rental vouchers, but if you're in that kind of moderate and middle income range between 60% of median income and 120% of median income, there are not a lot of opportunities to either rent or to purchase. And so, one of the things we've done with that first-time homebuyer program is to try to serve, that middle income range. There's also the missing middle term also is used in terms of types of housing. And so there's a need for smaller units to preserve existing smaller units, build smaller units, to build duplexes and triplexes. So there's something between a 200 unit multifamily development and a single family house. And there's lots of choices there that, we're not building them, they're not getting built. And I think that's a challenge, is to try to provide that housing when between the single family on a large lot and a very large multifamily.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Leora and Zena, so do you see some gaps and opportunities?
So I think we've kind of already spoken to them, but it relates to everything that John is saying about the missing middle, and that we're hearing about housing vouchers like practice and reality. I think there's a challenge to bring people into this and not make it an echo chamber of those who have been involved. Those who have been involved have all the expertise and the knowledge. That's not putting that down at all. It's saying we need to bring in additional folks to this. And what we are hearing constantly as sort of both a challenge but also a gap is, I would love to be involved, but I don't know anything about this. I.e., it's too esoteric. I can't figure out how to lean into this work, or I would love to be involved, but I don't have the time. And so for the network, we're thinking, how can we use our expertise? How can we not be out front with this? So how can we kind of be in the background? And also, how can we figure out how to fit people into this work? How to fit folks where they belong, where they can engage, where they can benefit, and where you all can benefit. There is a lot going on in town, but there is definitely definitely an information gap. So using that word gap, there is definitely an information gap. It's a steep learning curve for anyone who gets involved in this. And that's speaking from someone, again, many of you know me, don't live in Winchester, never did affordable housing work, and now trying to lean into it in a major way. I've been learning so much from CHAPA and those making the case calls, but figuring out how to fit folks into this work is really where I think we can assist, and we can assist Affordable Housing Trust, but also where the gap exists in town.
Mhm. That's interesting.
Can I add very briefly? What we're learning also is that it's not always about the funding. It's about connecting the resources to the need. It's about understanding the available mechanisms in town, including the trust. I know you're young also in your timeline, but we need to understand, what does the trust do? What does the Housing Partnership Board do in order to bring that message home to people? And we can reflect then, after we look at what's already available, even space, there's always places to put affordable housing, to create affordable housing. After we understand all of those mechanisms, then we reflect on how we bring more resources and opportunities to diversify our housing stock. So again, it's a lot about communication that I think will be one of the greatest opportunities for the Housing Trust to work on.
Yeah, and not just create another silo, for sure. Okay, so trust members, here's your chance to ask any and all questions or reflect on what we've heard. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and there were some really interesting things I heard tonight, so I hope you did too. Anybody have something they'd like to follow up on or talk a little more about? Welcome, Chris. Glad you could join us for a piece of this.
Apologies, everybody, for being late. I'm looking forward to watching the video, and thank you. And again, sorry for being late.
I have a question for Sue. How are vouchers funded? Well, now you're on mute, Sue.
Yeah.
You're still muted.
How's that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
By the federal government.
Sorry, we're stressing your throat.
Oh, I've been sick for days. By the federal government. So Winchester was allocated 143 vouchers.
Mhm.
And so every month we get paid by the federal government to distribute the HAP portion of rent, the housing assistance payment of rent. I want to just say one more thing. We also run on the Section 8 part of the family self-sufficiency program, and that's to promote self-sufficiency. So if one of our voucher holders joins the program, they join for 5 years. They have to say that they'll go to school or get a job and start working. We work with them. We usually do credit counseling and things of that nature. And then at the end of those 5 years, as long as they have done what they said they were going to do. I had one girl, she had gone to college and she just didn't finish the last little bit. So she ended up finishing, and right out of the gate, she got a great job as a nursing home management team. And then probably my most favorite story is last year I had a girl who, really nice girl. I said, did you, we have a list of questions. And I said, did you graduate high school? And she said, no. She said, I made stupid choices and a month before I was to graduate. I didn't have enough work study credit. So the principal at Woburn High told me that he didn't care if it took 20 years. He had my diploma right there and said, when you finish, I'll give it to you. Well, I called him and of course he was like, no, it's 20 years later. So I said to her, we're going to get you to finish this. And I worked it out with Woburn High. They have a high SAP program. And she had said, you know, I have my cap and gown and everything. I said, I'll make a deal with you. I said, you pass your high SAP program and I will either have the mayor or the superintendent of schools have a little, you know, pomp and circumstance for you and they'll hand it to you. And sure enough, she did. And I called the superintendent and he, it was in the paper and everything.
Oh.
And that's another part of housing that people have to understand. That's what makes the job worthwhile.
Mm.
So.
And that you provide those services, not just to people who live in housing that the Housing Authority owns, but to people that are voucher holders and therefore kind of part of the community,
Yep.
which is fantastic. Yep.
Family self-sufficiency is only for voucher holders.
Section 8. Mhm.
Yeah. So, that's really like my baby. So
That's a great start. All right, Susan, looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I do. I can you hear me? I don't have my usual.
Yep.
I wish I knew all of what I'm hearing about the Housing Authority when I was on the select board, or even when I was involved with the schools. And Sue, it sounds like you would occasionally do a landlord night and have people come in, or an open house. I'm wondering if you'd be, if it would be productive to have something like that and invite some of the boards in town government, and maybe
sure.
The high school parents association, people involved in the schools and the parent associations, just to understand what you just explained.
What housing is.
Yeah, that housing is more than just buildings,
Right. Housing, for the most part, it's somebody's home.
Mm.
And let's face it, a house isn't a home, it's what's in it. So.
I mean, there might be some cross-pollination, pollinization, whatever the word is, ideas. And I know that in Winchester, a lot of things just sort of turn into fundraising, or people see them in fundraising, like that paradigm, and maybe a little bit of fundraising could be a way of broadening awareness. If we bring in money to the Housing Authority or to the Affordable Housing Trust, great, but even better, the community just is more aware of the whole situation, the whole ecosystem that we have.
Well, and I think it's, I think it's all of us who've been involved with this, keep remembering, and you said it so lovely with your story, Sue, it's about the people living there. The whole reason we're doing this is because people need a place to live and they need stable rents that's affordable to be then able to do the other things that they need to do in their lives for themselves and for their kids. And, without stable housing that you can afford, it's very hard. It's very hard to do that. And putting that personal face on it that, it is in our community, I think can be very effective in a lot of ways. Okay, anybody else? So the trust is we're working with Mass Housing Partnership, and we're trying to think about, again, what we focus on. We have a limited amount of money from the select board to be able to invest in some housing developments. But we want to try to think creatively and expansively about what we can do and not duplicate, but complement the work that's going on in the other organizations. So I, for one, want to make sure all of us stay connected and keep communicating, because that's what it's about, to make sure that we can leverage each other's work as much as we can. So I really appreciate everybody taking the time to be with us tonight. And as we keep going on this process, I think we may come back to you guys to kind of share what we're thinking and maybe get some feedback as we keep moving on this.
Right.
We really appreciate this opportunity, Marty. So I wanted to just thank you for the invitation and for giving us this opportunity.
Yeah, well, hopefully we all learn from each other, right? So that's a great thing. So as Beth said, the Waterfield town meeting is June the 6th. So I think there'll obviously be a lot of meetings around that ahead of time. I did share the memo with the select board, with the finance committee, and with Civico to let them know that we had taken the vote at our last meeting to approve the loan to support the development. So people know that. I think when the finance committee meets to discuss this, they may want us to come to talk about that. So I'll certainly keep all of you informed when the various and probably many meetings that are going to be happening around Waterfield happen over the next month, heading into town meeting. I don't know when we should meet again. I don't know what everybody thinks about that. We've kind of been meeting every other month, but we've had a couple of meetings in the interim to keep things going. So does anybody have a thought about when it would make sense for us to meet again? Should we try to meet again before town meeting on Waterfield? Should we wait and meet after that? What's I know Chris.
Talking just about the Affordable Housing Trust, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the Affordable Housing Trust. Yep. Sorry. Yeah, we just need to wrap up our meeting. Yep.
I think it makes sense for us to meet before the town meeting on Waterfield. I think we need as much support as possible and to see what we all can do. I think the good thing about our meetings is, Marty, you've kept them to an hour. So I think that helps to everybody to be here and to keep things moving. So I don't mind if we do one, even though it's a busy time. It's, you know, it's so important for us to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. So if we met.
Marty, will the trust be testifying at the special town meeting?
We haven't decided yet about that. I mean, we have voted to approve the loan to Civico. So I think it would be appropriate for us to share that. But I think as it gets closer, we'll be figuring all that out.
I mean, whose arm do I have to twist to convince someone who wears a trust T-shirt to get up and testify?
Oh, I think we will. I think it makes sense we will. And at select board.
I'll get Zena to do the arm twisting.
We'll coordinate that. So if we're going to meet, what does everybody think? The week of the 23rd? Does that make sense? I'm just being random, picking something. I get overwhelmed with doodle polls, so we can do it while everybody's on the phone. I would probably be good.
The week of May 20th, so like a month from now. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. For me, Wednesday nights have gotten very challenging, so Tuesdays are better. That's possible.
Tuesday, the 24th.
Tuesdays are good. Yeah.
Just an FYI, that's the week after the Anka Fair. I will be dead. I mean, I can do it. I just might be a little comatose.
Yeah, happily dead, probably, right? Happily exhausted. Yeah. All right. So shall we look at the 24th from 5 to 6?
Yep, that works for me.
Okay, let's hold it. Beth, would you send out something?
I'll send out an invite. Yep.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Okay. All right. Well, Sue, John, Zena, Leora, thank you so much
Thank you.
for joining us. And we'll find out too where this is recorded, so people can watch it again or whatever. So Beth, if you can figure that out, that would be helpful just to share with everybody, because I think again we learned a lot. That was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so we're done, adjourned, I guess. Everybody say aye. And
Aye.
all right, have a good evening. We'll see you
everyone.
soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Thanks so much.